And first, I'd like a round of applause because I remembered to hit record. That in itself is miraculous. Thank you very much. Thank you. You sure can't wait to tell Dr. Whitaker I remembered on my own. Usually I have to appoint somebody to remind me. So I hope everybody's doing well. I know you're real excited to hear this. It's actually hot again, and we've been able to go out on the beach. So that means for you that spring break is in the near future. So you can look forward to that. I had a problem right before, it's about a little after 6. I was going to try to get finished up on all my grading before this class started, and then I had a group that didn't have an instructor. So I had to jump over and join that group real quick on a totally different subject. So I'm trying to join you back now and get my head back into school law. So let's go back and review. You did your discussion board on field trip policy and protocol this week. That's what the one's about. Anybody, the ones I've read have been wonderful. Has anybody had any revelations in that experience, or experienced an accident on a field trip or a school bus, or anything you want to share?
My principal was shocked that I read that the chaperone to student ratio was supposed to be 1:8 on every field trip that we go on, because he said he never knew that, and we never do that.
Isn't that something?
Yeah. So he was quite surprised that he hadn't been following the school board policy.
You know, when I was first a principal, I didn't realize there was a school board policy about the and it's just being naive and coming from one system to a different one. And you got to remember, this is a long time ago too, but about the number of field trips you could take. I knew that, but I didn't know that there was a cap on the amount that you could charge for field trips. So, and that's a school board policy. That's not a law. And that varies from state to state, and then it varies from district to district, and it varies from principal. I know I had a rule, either they all go or none go, because in the beginning I had a school that did an overnight trip to the Outer Banks, and the same people were going on that trip every year, the same families, and the same families were left behind, it seemed like. So we just made a rule. And it's a great field trip, and I agree that it was a great field trip. But we find the money for all of us to go, or we don't go. And guess what? We all went, including my husband and me. So we had a great time. And if you have never taken kids to see the beach for the very first time, it's pretty awesome experience when you realize that we've been teaching you about this for 5 years. 5 school years, and until you actually see something like the ocean face to face, it's a concept that's really hard to understand. So anyway, so I believe in field trips very strongly, but they are also, as an administrator, I would rather just have a rule that said no field trips, because I'm going to tell you what, I prayed my way through many a day when I had kids on field trips. And most cases, especially my first 2 years at the school, I went on those field trips. And it was a lot of reasons. I wanted the staff to I wanted to get to know how the staff handled situations away from school. I wanted them to get to know me in a more, relaxed setting, and that happened. But I also wanted parents to earn their trust. And once I did that, then we overcame that problem. And after I've been around a couple of times and gone on a field trip with at least every grade level over the 2 years, then in the community, they knew that I cared, and that I cared about their students, and that I wanted to be a part of the education in the school. So the more active you can be visibly, and it's not that you do these things for politics or public relations completely. It has to do with that building community, building relationships, and building trust. You are asking people to give you their children, to take them away to some place that they may have never been before, and just to trust you to make good decisions. So it's a big responsibility. All right, let's see. What else do we have? This week we have, I want to ask you how your Zoom process is going. The main thing that Dr. Whitaker and I are concerned about is that you are getting your OMA, your artifacts, to your peer group so that they have an opportunity to respond to them before it's due. You can't hardly throw something at somebody, on a Saturday or Sunday and expect them to get it finished in time to get it in on Sunday. So I hope that you're working together with your groups and having conversations about that. I think several of the groups have a protocol established for that. So if you don't, you need our help with that, please let us know. Let's see, by February the 10th at midnight, peer review for OMA 2 should be into Stedman and to your Zoom team, because you have to turn around and turn it into us too. So all that's due at the same time. So when we put it in the syllabus like that, we expect you to kind of work with your group to plan ahead of time. When you send it to your peer, send it to Dr. Stedman at the same time. And I guess you know how to do that, right? Okay.
I did not realize that we were supposed to send our peer reviews to Stedman. I thought they just went to Whitaker.
I'm sorry. I wasn't clear. Not your peer review, your paper, your actual artifact.
Okay.
So when you send the artifact to your peers group, send the artifact or post it in the internship shell for Dr. Stedman to review.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay? All right.
Dr. Z, I have a question.
Sure.
I had, on my feedback from Dr. Stedman, he had told me to make sure that I put in all of the PLC notes and agendas into my my paper, my OMA, and I just was not sure, is he talking about the PLC notes and agendas for task 2 or for all the meetings in the school for task 1? I just wanted to clarify because I was confused.
To be honest with you, without seeing it, I'm not sure either. But I would definitely just email him back and ask him to clarify that, because I'm not really sure. I'm not sure what which he would be referring to either. And you can do all of them as attachments, at the end, but it sounds like he wanted you to embed them. Is that what he said?
Well, I'm not really sure. He just said be sure to include, but he never made a reference to OMA Task 2. And I was thinking, do you want me to go get PLC meeting notes for the entire school, every area I'm talking about? Because I couldn't understand, what are you talking about? But I don't know. I was just confused. So
I think you would be fine just to be sure that you have some attached that were like the major meeting, like the beginning, or like at the end when you're getting your presentation together or coming to conclusion.
That would be my PLC, right? But not the PLC for, your SIT meeting and your PBIS meetings and all things. Okay, that's what I wanted to make.
I think that's probably what he's referring to.
Okay.
Anybody else have a suggestion there? Get the same comment or anything?
Dr. Z, I don't have a suggestion for that, but I just want to clarify. So we don't just put our work into the discussion board for the OMA 1 and OMA 2. We also need to then send that to Dr. Stedman. That's new to me. We didn't do that last semester.
Yes. Last semester, you were in 601, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And so in 601, your professor and your instructor actually worked together. But from 603 and 605, we're on 2 separate tracks. But when it comes down to the end and the real accountability, if your artifact doesn't pass, Dr. Stedman's going to be the one with you, working with you to make whatever changes need to be made. And he's the one that's going to be with you throughout the process. So the coach is really the main one that says this is the way the artifact should be. However, the artifacts are introduced in the class, and I am a coach also. So I teach the artifact, but it's just, we feel like for your sake, you know how you get one person will say this and one person will say that. Everything's a little subjective. And so the only way to keep that for the candidates, the way to simplify that for you so you're not getting mixed messages, is to have a protocol that the coach has the final say. So I will grade your paper and you'll get a grade on it, but Dr. Stedman is the one that has the final say as far as this is good, it's ready for task stream, and so forth. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that was just new to me, and I was like, wait a minute, I didn't do that.
Okay. It's not a major deal. It's just that's why we do it.
Okay.
And so when I look at yours, if I look at it before he has looked at it, and I know that, or before I have a peer review, I'll probably just give you a 50. And then I don't know that Dr. Whitaker does that. I think she just waits until she has it. But I'll go in and look at it and give you a 50, because if I go in and I notice something that's wrong, I'm going to tell you too.
Okay.
But anyway, then we come back and correct that grade, and there's no record of the 50. It's just, it won't allow me to look and leave without giving a grade.
Okay, so I just need to put it in his shell.
Yes.
On Blackboard. Okay.
Right.
All right.
And then if you have a question about anything, he is online Sunday nights from 6 to 7, even during the Super Bowl, from 6 to 7, so that you can go on and ask any questions that you have.
Yeah, I saw that.
And Christy, I think the thing for you too is you can always move forward and then kind of hold that question for him and go on and talk to him on Sunday, because it's not going to hold you up until you get to task stream. You just don't want to go to task stream until he clarifies that for you. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. So let's see, back to what's due. So OMA 1 and 2 are due. I have a lot of them already, but they're due by the 10th. And then you're going to go from that right into OMA 3, which I've graded a couple of those already. And then the 3 and 4 are due by midnight on February 17th to me and Dr. Whitaker. Okay, it's pretty fast. But this one seems to be rolling out very quickly. And if you did not get to attend the Thursday night meeting with Dr. Lamb and Dr. Stedman, you want to get the Zoom notes for that, because that really helps. Amber, did that help you a lot? Because I know you're beyond that. Oops, wait a minute, let me unmute you.
I didn't find it super helpful because I had already passed most of the parts that they talked about.
Okay. Well, he's just explaining how you use the AppTel, right?
He did, and he clarified, the one section he did clarify is using the narrative section to make the transitions. I struggled to connect the two, but then eventually started understanding how it connected with all the data.
Okay.
And when someone was talking earlier about their PLCs that they've had, it's a lot of the same meetings. So you're able just to kind of cut and paste those, but yeah.
Right.
I
Okay.
think that's my problem. I'm trying to, I can't see how it all connects with the AppTel. I'm having a problem with getting it all connected in my mind.
I'm having the same problem, Sally. I feel like I'm trying to put a square peg in a round hole. I don't feel like the two have anything to do with each other.
Me either.
I started over. Like I literally started over and just wrote it from the example, and it came together in the end because I couldn't figure it out either.
Well, I'm about my 5th draft right now, and I ended up going back and adding things to my first task, even though he had already said it was okay, because I decided I needed data in order to talk about what I was going to do in task 2. And it's just been, I have spent hours upon hours on this task 2, and I'm still not feeling very confident about it.
Here's the best thing you heard from that Zoom session, though. Did you hear them say, this is the hardest?
Yeah. It definitely has been. And for his classes before, Dr. Z, I'm not sure yours, he kind of gave us the information back in December. And so I did get a jump start on mine, and that's the only reason I'm a little early.
Right. The OMA is just, and it's because it's organizational management, it's something you've never had before either. It's a totally new lens to be looking at it through. But if you can get with him on Sunday and let him talk you through it, but go back to that template. Personally, I think it's easier to start something from scratch than it is to try and use other pieces. But what happens when you're in the add-on program is that schools get upset if we have you collecting that much data. Because and especially like I was in a school the other day, they have 22 staff members. If you have 22 staff members and you are using them for your graduate work, you are using the same people over and over and over again. And so it starts to, rather than add to their program, it starts to detract. So that's why it's this way. But just remember, when you're looking at the overall school program and you're trying to look for areas of deficit, and then that's going to affect what you do with it at the end. So talk to him on Sunday and see if he can give you a better direction as to where he wants you to go with it, because each coach is a little bit different in how they handle it, but the end result is all the same. But and you can also text him or email him or suggest request like a phone conversation with him before Sunday, if that helps, Lori. But just and don't overthink it. That's the main thing. Just because it sounds like you're overthinking it too. And that's usually the people that are in this fast track program are also the gifted ones, who are also the ones who overachieve and overthink. So just try not to overthink. And the other thing is, sometimes what I tell my interns is, until you do it, I can't tell you how to fix it. So I can't get in your head and figure out what you're thinking, but if you just get it down on paper and get it to me, then I can tell you what you need to fix about it and what you need to change. But I need you just to get it down on paper first. Okay? All right. Well, we're gonna move away from artifacts, and I can stay on at the end if you need me to, and try to not answer some more of your questions. But I want to get into this school law, because this is the one that I think when I became a principal and I sat down in that chair and the full weight of the responsibility slapped me in the face, when I think it was NCAE or one of those, I got this thing about as a member, you have X number of dollars for liability. And I thought, oh, wow. And then it hits you. You are not only in charge or liable for the students, but for the staff and for the parents and anybody else that comes on that property. That is your house, it's your homeowner's insurance now. And so it's a big, big responsibility. Now, a big part of the program at Gardner-Webb, what we're trying to get you to do the most is to see things through a different lens. And that's what happens when you move from a classroom position to maybe a coaching position to an administrative position, you're changing your lens. So I'm going to give you an example of tonight's topic and the different lens and how it works, okay? So like when I was a classroom teacher, and this started back in the 70s, when I was a classroom teacher, we used to take our chairs out to the playground. And we'd sit on the playground during recess, and that's really the only time I ever got to talk to my team, because back then we didn't have cooperative planning time. And so, you know, we'd sit there and catch up on what's happening in everybody's family and watch the kids at recess. And then later, years later down the road, I became an assistant principal. And at that time, you really weren't supposed to sit at recess. You weren't supposed to take a chair out. You were really supposed to be with the kids. But most of the time, it ended up that teachers would congregate watching the kids, and the principal was okay with that. Because your job's hard, sometimes that's the only little bit of time you get away, right? Well, then as an assistant principal, I happened to be over-disciplined. So guess what? I started getting all these discipline referrals. Where'd they come from? They came from the playground. What happened at the playground? Well, nobody could tell me because they weren't being monitored closely. They were being watched, but nobody was really monitoring them to make sure that conflict didn't occur. And then when it did occur, nobody knew how to tell me how they tried to address it, if they tried to de-escalate it. So then I became a principal. And so I'm sitting in that chair thinking, okay, it's my job to make sure that these kids are protected. And I happen to know about this staff that they're not really used to being up and moving around with the kids on the playground. And so they're not going to be real happy with a new principal who comes in and lays down that law. So I asked myself why that was so important. What was it so important for teachers to be up moving around during recess time? Why couldn't they sit and watch the kids? And I came up with a couple of things. First of all, and this is going to be backwards to you, sorry. My mother bought this for me from her nursing home when I became a principal, and it's my name. And on the back of it, I have this little tattered piece of paper that's taped. And it says, "Is it in the best interest of students?" So when I became a principal, I interviewed each member of the staff before the school year started, and I said, you know what, I'll let you do about anything you want to. If you could just answer one question for me, and that is it in the best interest of students? If you come to me with a new program you want to do, if you come to me with a trip you want to take, or you want to throw away the chairs or bring in bean bags, whatever you want to do, I'll get behind you. If it's research-based and you can show me this is in the best interest of students. And so it wasn't in the best interest of students to have all of these conflicts on the playground, which number one, somebody could get hurt. Number two, it's a great place for bullying to start and just, fester. And it just wasn't in the best interest of students. So, second thing I found out was that in the teacher handbook published by the school system was this little line under teacher responsibilities. And it said, is responsible for actively monitoring students at all times. Actively monitoring. So it no longer became a principal who just wanted to make a lot of rules and put you in your place and make you work hard. It became a principal who knows how hard it is to stand all day, who knows what it's like to be with kids all day, but at the same time, who also knows what can happen and how liable you are and I am if you're not up, moving around, correcting people who are in the wrong place, separating people who shouldn't be getting together when things escalate, and actively monitoring students. I just tell you that because it helps you see what lens I'm talking about. And your thinking now needs to shift into the principal lens, because you think you've got responsibility now, and you do. You are liable for your students. But they're not going to come after you. They're coming after your boss, because your boss is in charge of you and the students. So, so anyway, that was a biggie for us. And so I planted that seed of actively monitoring students. And we began to talk in our meetings, in planning meetings and so forth, and in our school improvement team, checking ourselves. Are we actively monitoring students in the morning? So they come into the gym and there's somebody there watching them, but they go in and eat breakfast first. Who's really watching to make sure they get from there to here, and all sorts of things that I'm sure you have in place. And I'm sure we did too, but we just begin to think of school improvement in those terms of just really self-checking ourselves for monitoring. Now, you probably caught this in your book, but they're going to be harder on you for kids under 7. Kids 7 to 14, they're going to be a different kind of hard. And then when it's above 14, they give you a whole lot more slack. But the younger the children are, the greater your responsibility or expectation is for your liability. So let's see. The other thing we did was we began thinking about in terms of our building and liability issues with our building. And we were kind of centered in between not the greatest of all areas. Our poverty level was about 60-something%, and we had a lot of walk-in students. So the one thing we knew was that we had a lot of people on our playground at night. We had done we did a partnership with Park and Rec, and they'll match whatever you raise. In a lot of cases, they matched our $25,000 with their $25,000, and we got some awesome equipment. But it meant that we had to allow the community to use our playground. And although we had rules that they weren't supposed to use it at night, there was a certain time limit, stuff happened. So the other thing that I had to do, and my custodian wasn't happy, was I had to make his first duty is to go through the perimeter of the building. And I started that by going with him with the trash can and a stick and picking up trash, but at the same time finding a hypodermic needle, finding a broken Coke bottle, you know, just different, lots of condoms, just lots of different things that should not be on a playground for elementary kids. And so we did that. And once I did that with him a few times, and we had the discussion about what this could have caused if we hadn't picked it up and it had been in, you know, the playground when they came out at recess. You know, if you're going to delegate to people and ask them to do extra work from what they're currently doing, and it's because it's in the best interest of students, if you can sometimes just walk through it with them and explain to them why it's necessary or why you feel like it's a good practice, then that's half the battle right there. And that was certainly the case with this. So, so actively monitoring is a big thing. If you'll keep that in your mind and vocabulary as you move towards being an administrator in your directions to your staff. The other thing is there's It's the who and the how. So you have a duty roster, right? And you have a duty roster for car duty. You have one for bus duty. You have one for cafeteria duty, probably all these different things. So you know the who, but do you have it written down what you expect of them to do with that duty? So that when a substitute comes in, is there a folder that explains what that duty is? Because that's how you protect yourself. Just as a teacher has the responsibility of explaining to kids before they go on a field trip, don't stick your head out the window, keep your arms and body parts inside the bus, different things like things that they may already know. But if you read chapter 15, if you've already read it, you know that they've been held liable when they fail to go over those rules at the beginning of a trip and refresh and make sure that every child knows those rules. Then if a child loses a limb, God forbid, by sticking an arm or head out the window, then you did your due diligence. You did what was expected of you. You instructed the students of the proper safety measures. That's a whole different thing from when if you were to be charged and go into court and say, well, we knew they'd been on a field trip before, so we knew they knew how they were supposed to act. The court's going to point it at you every time if that's what if you're just counting on they should have known that, then they're not going to say that you did your due diligence or did what you should have done to make sure that everything was covered. All right, we talk about tort liability, and it's mainly your responsibility, the educator's responsibility for standard of care. So in other words, if you take your own children into a situation, what kinds of rules are you going to go over with them before you go there? If you take them to a place that could be, what are you going to go over with them? Do you have certain safety things that you go over at your home with your children, or things that you've taught them? Those are the same things that you're expected to teach your students and to hold them to those standards too, for safety. Tort liability for educators, though, usually comes in the form of negligence. The personal liability for the injury to students or others from school personnel is held accountable under the law. So, and it is so hard, you know, when you're in that job and you have 30 kids in that room and they're coming and telling you stuff all day, and somebody happens to say to you, so-and-so has been messing with me, or said this to me, or I'm afraid to do this. And it's like the fifth complaint of a different issue, or it is so easy to say, let's talk about that tomorrow. But you talk about that, you say you're going to talk about that tomorrow, and something happens between now and tomorrow, then you're liable because a situation was called to your attention and you didn't do all that you could at that point to see if there was anything that needed to be prevented or that you needed to do. There was I think it's, what is it, Gammon versus Edwardsville, I believe it is, where the court ruled in favor of a girl. She came with a complaint that she was being bullied or that somebody had threatened her, and she was afraid. She's in the 8th grade. Yeah, so it's the nonfeasance. It's the failure to act when there's a duty to act and your failure to act. So she came and reported that she was being bullied or whatever, that she was afraid. They called the student in, fussed at them for it, reprimanded them, went over the rules, told them that there would be consequences next time. if they bothered this student again. And the two students later on in the day were in the schoolyard, and the one who had threatened to hit the child in the head, and she was hurt. And so in that case, the injured student claimed that the school's response to her given complaint and threat of violence was inadequate. And the court agreed that that she had called to their attention the situation, and although they addressed it, they didn't address it adequately. And so they ruled in favor of the student. When you're talking about misfeasance, there's two. There is act of commission and omission. The act of omission example they used was when there was a ditch on the property of the school that looked dangerous, and the principal knew it was, and he had cautioned some kids to stay away from it, but they played like football, tag football or whatever in that area sometimes. And a student fell into that ditch and was hurt. But he hadn't done anything to make it a safe area. He was aware there was a safety issue, but he hadn't done anything to make sure. The situation that I had that was sort of similar was I had a gate in the lower end of the playground, far lower end of the playground. And I had it because of the walkers, so they didn't have to walk all the way around the school. But the lock on that, there wasn't a lock on the gate, right? Because we also did our fire drills going in that direction. So you want, if you're going to have to exit the school, you want to have your gates open, right? But then we had a class for students with autism, and we had a runner. So as soon as we had that situation and we had our meeting with our school safety team, first thing that hit was that gate. So we immediately called out the fire marshal. We called out the head of health and safety for the system, the head of the police department, and we had them all examine our protocol, our procedures for exiting, all the safety protocol, to make sure that we could safely lock that gate during the day. And we did. Had we not done that, two issues. Number one, if we had locked it and it had turned out to be an exit that was crucial, that law enforcement and fire marshals deemed as an emergency exit, then I would have been liable in that case. If the student had run out that gate, that's another liability. So anything that comes to your attention, you're not expected to know what to do right that second, but you need to find out. And until you find out, then you need to make sure that you have another plan in place. So that gate, the gate was then actively monitored, by our security system. Camera was forced on that gate, and we already had a doorbell on the door for the class of students with autism. But it's thinking through not just what will happen, what might happen, or what could happen, and then responding. By the same token, the other one is when you over-respond. And so a student, they used the example of a student on the football field that collapsed, and they made the assumption that it was heat exhaustion and treated him for that without seeking medical attention. And it wasn't exhaustion, it was a stroke, and the student actually died. So in some cases, you can overreact and underreact, and we want you to be right in the middle. And if you read enough of these examples, I think chapter 15 gives you great examples of real life situations, and it makes you think that this could happen or that could happen, and think through those. And if you have somebody that you can sit down and talk to at school, just about some of their experiences, it's really helpful. Or ask questions. Why do you do this, or why don't you do that? A lot of times if they don't explain. But when you get in the big chair, I always found as an administrator, it was so important to explain the why of your decisions, the why of the things that you're doing, so that teachers, parents, people can't argue with if it's in the best interest of students. Who can argue with that? Who's going to argue with that? A parent's not going to argue with that. So if you can relate things into, it's not me, the big principal, sitting up here making all the rules, pointing my finger at you, telling you what to do. It is me, the caregiver, here with my arms out, wrapped around you, the staff, and you, the students, and trying to do my due diligence in making sure that I provided you with a safe place to be. So those are like the main things, I think. Sorry about my voice tonight. Those are, I think, the highlights from this chapter. Be sure and read the focus and the cues and the management tips. Because I think, especially like on 358, when they get into those examples of management cues, and use those as sort of like your role playing situations, and see what you would do and what you think. The other one I think is on 361, if you can make a note of that. It's section C in your book, and it's kind of what I was just talking about. You are, do you have proper supervision, just like your principal and the field trip? You know, it's something we don't think about until there's a problem. And so it's like we need to go back and think through everything we do. Is there proper supervision? Are things being properly maintained? How's the maintenance going? Proper maintenance on things. And all about the field trip rules and possibilities. Do you know where your students are going on a field trip? Because that's the other thing. I didn't know the places that the first grade always went to this place and the second grade always went to that place. I wasn't from that community, so I wasn't familiar with those places. So before I approved any of those, I got in my car and drove to those places, because I need to know, because I'm liable for what happens there. When a parent signs a permission slip, they're barely just saying, hey, I know my child's going somewhere. They're not saying, you know, I give you permission to have an accident, or, you know, I'm releasing you from any liability. No, they're simply saying, I know they're going. That's pretty much what that, sorry, my door's going bump, bump. They're pretty much just telling you that they know that they're going. And as you get towards the end of the chapter, they go on to talk about other things like instruction. I don't dwell on that a lot, because in an age of accountability with standardized testing and with school improvement, continuous school improvement, your superintendent is holding you to high standards academically and instructionally. But there was a day when that wasn't as strong a case as it is now. But I think the one that you have to be the most concerned about is the safety issue, and the issue of, I hate to keep calling it bullying, because it's not always bullying. Sometimes it's just picking on somebody, and that's different from bullying. You know, there's a difference in picking on somebody today and being their best friend tomorrow, or being their best friend today and not speaking to each other tomorrow. There's a difference in that, and then bullying, which goes on over a period of time targeting the same student. So either way, you're liable. So I'm just the bearer of good news, huh? But the thing I want to tell you is that it is a responsibility that I accepted with pleasure. It is an awesome responsibility, but it is an awesome responsibility. Being a principal was the greatest job ever. And I always took it very seriously. I always tried to think through all the safety issues, and I missed them. But the thing is, and I believe this, and we did have some things happen, but the thing is that when things did happen, staff, students, and parents knew that I cared about what happened at that school. They knew that to the best of my ability, I had provided a safe environment. They knew that safety was important to me. Safety from each other, safety from the outside, and safety from within, and particularly safety in that building. So what you do has a lot to do with how people will respond to you when things don't go well. And if you have a flippant attitude about things, when a parent comes to you upset about something, and you want to just say, just make an appointment, as opposed to saying, I can tell you're really upset. I have a meeting in 5 minutes. I'm not trying to blow you off. I really want to talk to you about this. I really want to get to the bottom of it. I really do care. There's a big difference in their perception of who you are. So just want to be sure that you're putting out there who you really are and what your message really is. I have a couple of questions on the chat, and while I'm doing that, does anybody else have a, does anybody else have any questions about what you read or comments? Sherry, are you wanting the link to Dr. Lamb's meeting, his Zoom session on OMA?
No, no, some other ladies needed it. I provided them with it.
Oh, you got it. Okay, thank you. All right. So you're all taken care of. Did anybody else have a chat that wasn't taken care of? Let me just say thank you. It's so hard for me to look at all of you and remember to record and listen to the chat at the same time. But I should be able to, so I'm working on it. All right. Any other questions or comments?
I have a question.
Yes,
And-
Barbara, it is so good to see you. Barbara is I'm Barbara's coach one. So when she started in the program and you have that site visit, one site visit, and that's the only time you see him, that was me and Barbara. So it's good to see you.
Yes, ma'am. So I have a question, and that's because it happened today, so I guess it's really fresh. But I had a student that was in the hallway. It was during my observation time. She was crying, so I took her to guidance. And she had just found out that one of her friends had been shot. Okay, I work in a high school. So the school resource officer happened to be walking by, and he said, do you all need me? Because he saw two of us with her. And I said, well, let me ask you something. And so I said, she just got this news. Can you confirm it? We don't want to upset her or, calm her down however we can. And so he did call dispatch, and it was true, and the person was deceased. And he said, you all need to go ahead and call her mom because we don't want her to get on the bus like that. So we called mom and got mom. When we were able to get mom on the phone, he'd come back and said that she can't leave because detectives were on the way to speak with her. So we asked mom to hurried to the school, and she was like, well, she started panicking again. And I said to her, I said, don't worry, they won't speak to you without your mother. And I was reprimanded afterwards for saying that, because apparently they can speak to children without their parent present, but she was underage. So I just thought that the school had some liability to make sure that, number one, her mom was well aware of what was going on and gave consent for someone to interrogate her child. But I was told that wasn't the case.
Right. And you're correct that they don't have to have parent consent to. Now here's the thing. You'll get into when, and I don't know if we've talked about this yet or not. No, it's next week. We'll talk about it. The other, that now a police officer cannot go in a student's book bag without consent, but you can. So, I think the best, the best rule of thumb is to ask that you have a school resource officer in your school. And one of the most important meetings as a staff you can have is to ask your school resource officer and your principal to come and present to you when is this appropriate, when is it not appropriate, what can we do, what can we say, because it's just like you said, you were reprimanded, how did you know, right? So I think that's a really good point, is that in your different districts, because sometimes school board policy dictates things like that too. So I think it'd be a really good idea to have your school resource officer, your principal, and your safety officer from your school come together and present to you that, because you're exactly right. It's hard to know. It's really hard to know who has the right to do what. Good point. Anybody else?
Would the student have had the right to refuse?
Now, I believe they do, correct?
Well, and her mom did. Once the detective got there, she said, we're not answering any of your questions.
Right.
And they left because mom happened to get there before the detective arrived. But
Right.
But could the student have said, I'm not going to answer any questions until my mother gets here?
I'm pretty sure that's, you can't force somebody to speak. So, yeah.
But I wonder if Barbara would have gotten in trouble had she told the student she could do that.
Exactly. Exactly. That you could do it like this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because if ultimately we're there for the students,
Right.
then we should be giving advice to the students.
Right. Right.
So that they're comfortable.
I find it hard to believe, though, that they would have talked to her without a parent. And that's sort of makes me question, what all is involved. What other pieces of that puzzle are there that we don't know about? Do you know what I mean? So I don't know. I mean, is there any possibility the parents could have somehow been involved, or,
I don't know, but just in principle, period, they were like, they don't have to wait on parents. It doesn't matter how old they are.
Right.
They can question children. And I just found that shocking.
Right.
Barbara, I think if I were in your spot, I would say, I'm training to be an administrator. Could you show me where in the law it says that that's okay, so that I'll be able to refer to it later? And just see if they can come up with it.
That's a very good one. Have you had I don't think she's done the chapter yet on students' rights, has she? Dr. Whitaker? She didn't do students' rights yet. That's a big one. We'll go into that when we get to that one too. We'll talk about that more at that one. All right, anybody else? All right. Well, I'm going to give it my best shot to render this video and get it to the right place. If you need anything this week, don't hesitate to contact us. My only thing to you is, if you have finished, like Amber had been through the peer process, been through the Dr. Stedman process, she sent me an email, so I knew for a fact that hers had done. The rest of you, I'll figure it out by going back in and looking. But if you want to give me an email, then I'll, rather than waiting till I sit down and grade a whole bunch of stuff at one time, I'll try and go in, because I know you're anxious to make sure they pass everything.
I have one more question. I'm guessing we just submit. I'm trying to figure out where we submit to get you all to give us feedback, because I got a grade, like the not a participation grade, but the attempt grade for my OMA 1, but I never got any feedback about how it was.
From Dr. Whitaker?
Uh-huh. Did that mean that I didn't put it in the right place, or?
No, that means you won't get, that's what I was trying to say. I just guess I didn't say it well. We won't give you, the instructor won't give you much feedback on the artifact unless it's something blatantly wrong.
Oh, that's what you were talking about at the beginning.
And the reason is because we don't want two people, well, this one said I needed to have this as a heading. Well, that one said I didn't.
Okay.
Heading. That one said, so to stop that, because
Gotcha.
The thing about it is, the thing about Gardner Webb that's good and bad, the thing that's bad about it is that these artifacts are abstract. Yours is not going to look like yours. Everybody's is different. Every one that I look at is different. So I have the rubric, and I look at the rubric, but it's a judgment call. And we have meetings where all of us come to the team together. I've been an evaluator, Whitaker's been an evaluator, all of that, to try to make sure that we're on the same page. But we don't all have the same language. And so we just found that it's better if students are only hearing one voice saying, fix this. So if I had a problem, Lori, I would probably say to Dr. Stedman, I looked at Lori's paper and I wasn't sure about this, so you might want to take a double. That's what I would do. But I wouldn't give you feedback on it.
Okay, I remember you saying all of that at the beginning. I don't know why it didn't occur to me that that's what you were talking about.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to. And
okay, thank you.
That's why.
Just to double check again, we have submitted to the discussion board in class for peer review. We submit to the shell for Dr. Stedman. Then are we putting it in a Dropbox to be graded?
Yeah, once you have made any revisions that they recommended, or once that they've said it's good to go, then you put it in the box to be graded by me.
Okay.
And see, what's happening is when you submit it for peer review, it's showing up in the box then. And then when your peer review comes, it's showing up then. And then when you revise it and send it to me, it's showing up again. So that's not your fault. That's our glitch. So,
So what about the discussion board grade? When should we get a grade for that? Do we need to put that in the assignment Dropbox after we post it to the discussion board?
No, you'll get a grade for that. So
fairly quickly? Fairly quickly?
Depends. Right now I'm working on the ones of the field trip policy.
Okay.
And I can't remember if Dr. Whitaker was doing hers today or tomorrow. I can't remember which one she's working on.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't usually do them until they're all in. That's what we usually do. Now, let me see. I need to figure out if everybody who's here, okay? Brooks, Caldwell, Ferguson, Hall, Christie. All right. I think I have you all. All right. Anything else?
Dr. C, did you catch mine?
Did I catch yours?
Yeah, Melton.
In the,
No, you just took the roll. I didn't hear.
yes, I've got you.
Okay, just want to make sure.
Yeah, I got you and Freeman are down at the bottom by yourselves.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Okay, guys, will you have a good week? Really good week. If there's anything we can help you with, let us know. All right. And go through the eyes of safety and look at your principal lens and see what you see tomorrow morning when you go in. Take a look at that from that different perspective. After looking at those management cues in your book and see what you see. Okay? Have a good night. It's good seeing you. Thanks for coming.